Okay, we have a plan of action. I'm no longer feeling guilty about chopping this body up. It's shown conclusively how rotten it is. The back end is mostly floating now, so I'm going to go through the A pillars first, down near at the scuttle. The B pillars are a little bit more involved to remove. There's some bolts at the bottom, there's some hidden bolts at the top, so I'm just going to cut a section of the roof out around the top of the B pillar, and we'll deal with those afterwards. And then the only thing holding the back of the car together is that one little bit of arch that hasn't rotted through, so I'll save that cut to last. That should mean I don't trap my cutting disc. It should mean it's as safe as possible, but first I need to remove the wire from the roof, because otherwise that's just going to give us a headache. So I'm going to busily unthread all of that, and then we should be able to get the roof off. I'll try and keep my shadow out of the shot. It's a very sunny day today, which is lovely, but awkward for filming. Anyway, here we have the top of the B pillar. I've cut a hole in the roof here. This isn't exactly how I was intending to do this. I thought I'd have to cut through the frame and all that sort of thing, but I don't have to. You've got these 4 nuts here, which go on bolts from underneath, that hold the cast aluminium B pillar to the wooden frame of the roof and the car itself. There's also a metal brace here, which is where the wiring harness goes through. It'll provide some strengthening as well. I thought I was going to have to cut through this frame, which is a bit of a nuisance, but actually I've got really good access to these nuts in here, so I'm just going to chop those off, and that will free the B pillar. I've already gone through the A pillars. They are incredibly thin, obviously, and they're made of wood, so the whole thing, yeah, there's not really any structure in here now, which is great. It's going to make my life a bit easier, but it's also slightly daunting. Let's get chopping, and then I should get the roof off. Removing the B pillars is a little bit more involved than expected. So after you've taken the roof section off, which is not the normal way of doing it, but in this case it's good for illustrating, you do need to bend the gutter out of the way on the underside of here, because that hides the fixings that live under here. Once you've done that, in theory, I think what's supposed to happen is you put a spanner or socket through where the headlining would be to get the nuts, and a screwdriver in through the bottom. But of course, it's steel through aluminium, so they've seized to one another, and it's a flathead screw, so it's never going to come undone. So this is probably the only way that you can take them off. On the top, you've also got a little steel plate, and on this side you've got a steel brace which does the same job. And once you've got all of that out the way, you can simply knock the bolts out. Unless they've seized in so bad, it snaps off the top of the B pillar. Not exactly thrilled about that. It's probably repairable though, so I shall keep it with the B pillar just in case. But that bolt there is completely seized, and there's no way you would have got that out in the normal way. You'd probably have to drill the head or something. What a nuisance. Anyway, what that now means is the only thing holding this roof on, I hope, is this little bit of inner arch here. So I'm going to chop through that. I'm going to see if Pat can help me safely remove this roof from the car. And there we are, that's the roof off. 2-person job. Wasn't too bad actually. The biggest problem was the weight distribution on the roof, which is obviously all at the back. I kind of wish I hadn't had to cut an access hole to get everything apart, but can't be helped. Nobody's going to want this roof anyway. It's aluminium and nobody likes working with it. So there we go, that's one roof off and almost down to a bare chassis now, which is super. I'm going to strip a good portion of the aluminium out of this. because there's not really any value in the roof or the framework, and there's no market for it. So I'll salvage the material that is useful and dispose the materials that aren't. The hinges I will probably rescue just because they're not great, but it seems silly not to. Been plodding away, unbolting a few more bits. So this is the gearbox cover inside the car. You remove this to fill it up and drain it. The voltage regulator, I just snipped the original harness here, and that will keep me my colour code intact. That actually looks in reasonable shape inside, so that might be okay. I then turn my attention to some of the floor. I've almost got the transmission cover here off. This tunnel is actually welded to the body, so I can't really save that bit. But this unbolts, this panel here unbolts, and I want to remove all of that from the car because they're in pretty good shape, surprisingly, in this, and it would just be good to have them. I thought, well, what I'll do next is I'll remove the wiper mechanism. Normally you would unscrew the various screws on here and do it that way and take your time, and well, that's not going to happen, because what I've found is this wooden rail here that everything screws into is just rotten, completely rotten, and I'm left with a metal brace here that runs from one A pillar to the other. So I'm going to slice through the metal brace each end and then lift the whole rail out. I've already unscrewed, unbolted the clamps that hold the gear selector to the steering column, which allows this bracket here to be free floating, and that should come off with the remains of the dashboard. Disconnected the wiring from the wiper motor. We will test this when it comes off the car. I suspect it's fine. And I don't think I need to remove this to remove the mechanism, but we'll find out. Well, cut through the section I wanted, which is just the brace here, which also had rot in it, and you can see how thin this has got up here, which should be tacked onto this and mostly wasn't. As this bit here cut, the rail just disintegrated. It just came apart. At this side here, you can see this big metal plate here is what the wiper mechanism actually screws into, and then on into the wooden frame. And I just managed to get a screwdriver in and just pried that off the wooden frame, so I don't actually need to cut this end, which you can see, you know, more rot. So that's good. I don't have to get Pat to move the van out of the way, and I don't have to play with the angle grinder. So I'm going to just get this off. Oh, and you can see here, this is the drive shaft, I suppose, for the wiper to get the drive from the motor to the arms, and there is the socket in the back of the wiper. There's nothing to disconnect, it's just a friction fit. So I didn't actually have to do anything special up there, which is great. I can then take my time to remove the wiper motor later. I have to get a little creative sometimes with the solutions. Access for the nut isn't great. This is the only tool I have that will actually go on there. Access for the bolt is brilliant. Best of all, because this has all been soaked in grease for so long, it's coming undone really easily. Probably don't need this extension. It's a 21mm or imperial equivalent for both. Now I just have the joy of getting this bolt out. Let's give it a pry. quite annoying. We're back when I figured this out. That did the trick. Lock them loosely just behind the head like that, and then you could sort of unscrew it. Everything came out. Steering column is now loose, which is brilliant. I can now remove a couple of things that were locked in place. I'll come back to this in a moment. First one, this bolt that holds on the lever arm shock absorber. The next one is the gear selector mechanism here, because this will slide up, but before, this bracket here was hitting the bulkhead before it was out of this, and I don't know how that actually comes off the column. So I should be able to pull it up now. And yeah, there we go. That's now free from there. I should be able to wiggle that piece out. I've already dismantled the little gear selector and things. I can put all this back together again properly. I think the easiest way to get the steering column off is going to be, rather than separating the box, finish removing this toe board here and then just take everything out through into the car. For now, this is fine. I can come back to this when I've got some time to actually get the angle grinder out. I cheated. I just ground through fixings. Everything was seized and fighting me, and I don't need to save fixings. Not at this point. Happily though, that now means all of the metal that we need to save off the front, the sheet metal, is now removed, which is really useful, probably for the future. And you will notice there is no steering column, because once I'd got this panel off, there was one bracket here that you can unscrew, but I've just chopped through it because of where we are with this, and that allows you to drop the column out, and then you can either fight it through the car, or as I've done, just bring it through because there's no engine or anything. It was a lot easier. Yeah, there's a few mechanical things on here now to go, but not much else. Didn't do anything on the back end today. I just didn't want to. And the B-pillars are still in place as well, for the same reason. I just don't want to fight with that today. But today's treasure is pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with this. So we've got what looks to be a reasonable voltage regulator. We'll know when it's tested. A dim dip switch, one of the foot pedal ones. One of the pedals, which I had to remove to get the panel out. Transmission cover. All of the header rail that the dashboard goes into, so that's got your steering column bracket, all the windscreen wiper stuff, which I need to dismantle, but because the wood's rotten, that's kind of difficult at the moment. The gear selector quadrant and the gear selector mechanism there as well, the other radiator stay. And on the floor we've got the large transmission tunnel cover, which normally does unscrew and unbolt, and the kick panel, which likewise unscrews and unbolts from the car. Now, I've saved these not because we need them, but because they're in pretty good shape, surprisingly, and they might be useful for somebody else in the future. And of course, we have the steering column with the box and idler arm still attached, because I don't know how any of this comes apart. But as it stands, it's not too difficult to store this. I would like to know how the steering wheel comes off on these, because there's honestly nothing obvious at all. There's no missing nut there as far as I can tell. I don't know whether this just pulls off or has a key somewhere. There's no sign of a grub screw around the back here. There must be a way of getting the steering wheel off the column. I just don't know what that way is. A lot of work, but worth it. Really, really worth it. Spares for these are not easy to come by, and now we have some. Thought it might be an idea to give you a bit of a better look at the roof now that it's actually, you know, off the car and upside down, so you can actually see what we were dealing with. Now, the majority of the frame is fine, as you would expect, but basically from where the rear bar is here for the rear screen up to this one, that's really the only good bit. Everything else has problems, and this is why it would have been a lot of work to put this right. Up at the front here on the windscreen surround, you can see where it's cracked here. Now some of this will be, there's a few cracks from when we've removed it, but we noticed when we removed the windscreen that the wood is quite soft and it keeps doing this in places, so it's obviously compromised somewhere. And of course there's some cracking in the A-pillars. That might have been from the removal, but it may have also been from it being compromised. Where it goes over the rear arches when they fell off, this is what we're dealing with. It's very, very soft, full of woodworm, and you know, you can just break big chunks off. So that's not great. The rear screen had been leaking, so a big chunk of the frame here is just gone. There's nothing there at all, so you'd have to rebuild all of this, and this of course is where the boot lid hinges bolt into, and it's just gone. Same again on this side for the rail over the arch, and it's not quite as bad, but it's still bad. And where the frame broke off on the back end, this is just rotted through completely. I didn't cut this, this just snapped. Here's where I was trying to chisel through for my nice cut, and again this is all woodwormy, it's all rotten, and yeah, here you go on the rear screen, you can see where it's been leaking on that corner, and we've got mould, wet rot, and the woodworms have got in. It's going on here as well, so really would have been an awful lot of work to put this right. An awful lot. Finally got everything cleared off, tidied up. Removing what was left of the steel body wasn't too difficult because it was so rotten, and we've given everything a good sweep underneath, which was quite a lot of junk. Chassis looks in reasonable shape. There's a few localised bits, like just there, and this corner is particularly bad, but it is repairable if somebody wanted to. The rest of the chassis seems okay. This does make getting this rear end off a lot easier, and a few bits and pieces, but I'll go into that in more detail some other time. The parts storage at the moment isn't ideal, but then nothing about getting this down a car was particularly ideal. Now that we've got all the big chunks off, I can go through and process things better. Just saves time doing it this way. Today the B-pillars came off, and I found it easier just to basically chop off the whole sill. I can use these sills to help me repair ours, because I can turn these around and look at them and understand the shapes that I need, which is quite difficult to do with them still attached to the car. You can see though, this is the bad side, and yeah, there's not much left. It's not great, but there should be a closing panel here, and then behind you have some strengthening bars, and this section is open. And yeah, all the connections are all just disappeared. This also meant I didn't have to worry about fighting with these bolts or trying to grind through them or anything like that. I can do that again later on, now that I have all of this off the car. Other item of note that was saved is the battery box. Very simple construction, very, very sturdy. Presumably, you know, older batteries, larger, heavier. I don't think it really needs to be this heavy, but it would be interesting to get it rebuilt in something like stainless steel, or maybe even aluminium, I don't know. It's in reasonable shape. The side panels here, which are quite thin, have predictably rotted away. It happens, but it's a very repairable piece, and I know ours has similar sort of damage on the side there, so I could repair this one and then swap them over. That would be really good. Next is just the long process of stripping off the rubbish, working out what we need to salvage, cleaning things, putting things up for sale for anybody else that might need any of these parts, and of course finding somewhere to store an entire car. Yesterday went through and hosed all of this down as much as I could. There is some old grease around the prop shaft here that it needs more work to remove than I'm willing to do. Just wanted to get all the loose stuff off so I could get to the next bits and pieces, and it's actually cleaned up pretty good, all things considered. What I want to do today is take out these fuel lines and record where the electrics go. So you start off, your rear light here goes across what is usually the edge of the boot floor and down to what is usually the corner of the boot, as you've seen in other videos. I have learned that one of the earth points actually comes out and joins onto the end of the chassis here. This car also has the mystery bracket, and I don't know what's supposed to go on it. It's only on this side, so presumably for a fog light or a reversing light or something like that. Once you've got to this corner, it kicks back again for the fuel tank sender. So you have the wiring comes up here and then into your fuel tank, and it disappears. I'll just get this out of the way. So when it comes out from the boot, curls around, disappears into the chassis here. And there's two main parts of the loom, one goes over and one goes under this cross brace, which holds the fuel tank. And it feeds back into the chassis, goes all the way along, and along here there are some clamps. Most of them are actually missing on this one. And you have a tee-off here for the brake light switch, and I think the brake light switch in this car might be broken, but I want to get it off so I've got a reference, because the one in our car is wrong. And then it disappears through the chassis and pops up at the front there. When it pops up at the front, one pops up through this front hole, and there's a grommet there. One pops up through the back. They both run up the steering column when that's in, up to the bulkhead here, and then they connect into a bracket on there. Some of the wiring then branches across for the regulator box, but not for the wiper motor. And then from this junction here, this then goes down and back into the car, I think. Or does it? I'm not sure because this bit's missing. No, this will be for the other run that usually disappears down here and does your headlights and side lights and horns, which again, I'm missing on this car. So you branch from the bulkhead, emerges through here underneath this box section here, and then goes up onto the bulkhead itself. This looks like it hasn't been disturbed, so those fixings up there, some of those are for the wiper motor, which is where some of these P-clips look to bolt on. And then it pops back outside again to the other side for the coil, the oil pressure sender I believe, and possibly a couple of other bits and pieces. For this fuel line, which is missing on our car, it's been replaced with some plasticky pipe. That runs from what would be the fuel tank back here into the chassis, and I can find one clip here, and I think there might be more clips that are supposed to be on here, but that's it, holding that in. And another connector branches off and pops out here where it's bolted to the chassis. Another route of note is the speedo cable, which runs from the gearbox there, or where the gearbox would be anyway, and goes into the chassis to come out here. It then loops back on itself, goes back through the bulkhead there to the back of the instrument panel. And our car, I don't believe it's done like that. The handbrake goes from the handle inside the car down into this bracket here on the chassis, and then joins this mechanism here. Got all the fuel lines out of there. The one clip that was there could just be bent out of the way, so that made things easy. And I've taken out the few bolts holding in the wiring loom under here, so I've been able to free out that trim panel. I think I've got almost everything I need to get off here now. Rather more modest haul this time. The original copper fuel lines there, wiper motor, some P-clips, which are always handy to have, they're decent quality. The fuel reserve cable, which, I don't know, might come in handy. The old earth strap, because the one on ours was completely done. And this one looks like it might be okay. We'll see. And of course, the big trim panel. Pretty good condition one. Needs a bit of a clean. You can see there's just a little bit of mould marking here, but I wanted it out of the car. Now it's exposed to the elements a bit more fully. I didn't want it getting destroyed in the rain. Not much to go. Mostly suspension stuff now. And then we'll have a chassis to get rid of.